6. I'm going to read just a few verses. It's talking about the whole armor of God. It kind of touches, it goes right with Kevin's message about David and Goliath. So we're going to touch on that. The book of Ephesians chapter 6. It says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand." When I was thinking about a message for Youth Sunday, this is just not for the youth. This is something that sometimes we struggle with. You know, we struggle with it maybe more when we're younger, but we get a little bit better at it, but it doesn't mean we got the victory over it. And that is boundaries and self-restraint. That is something, I tell you, it's a lifelong struggle. You know, if you listen to the world, please don't. You know, because there are no boundaries in the world. They don't put anything. Look at the world. There's no limits. They make it so the gray area, so you're over the line and you don't even know it. In a world that goes beyond boundaries, using self-restraint is a must. Self-restraint is your friend. It will benefit you greatly. Say, how am I to do that? I'm out there in the world all the time and I got all this stuff coming against me. Well, you know, it's easier said than done, but some of the things you need to do is, one is walk with God. First, you must know God. And you got to strive to walk with him every day. Secondly, you got to walk away from the old. Because if you continue to walk in the old, nothing good is ever going to come from it. And you must walk in the new. Once you have found victory in Jesus, and you're saved, and you're trying to do the best, continue to walk in that. I see so many people, they get the victory, but they just tend to go right back the way they were after a while because it becomes hard. It's a struggle. Jesus never said it was going to be easy. He said he would be with us. He would never leave us nor forsake us at any time. So a lot of times we just have to stay the course even when it's hard. The boundaries that the world set are not ones that God would set many times. Look at a lot of the things that are okay in society today. God's Word says something completely different. Whatever topic you want to pick, the world's going to go the other way most of the time. They might dress it up and make it sound good, but I'm going to go with God every time because I know what the world will do to me. I've been there, and I know how it left me feel, and I know how God makes me feel. I'll choose God. If you so to choose the world, that is your choice. It's not because God did not desire you to be saved. He desires for you to be saved, to see a better life for you. I don't know who doesn't want a better life. But a lot of times we go about it in all the wrong ways. All we have to do is look back at our own country. Look at our nation. Just in the last 100 years, all the things that have happened and transpired. We're going to walk through this a little bit. 1920s. What were they called? Y'all know. Roaring 20s. A great time of prosperity in America. Well, a lot of other things were going on too. A lot of things, the prosperity was unchecked. There was no checks and balances. You have to have checks and balances in your life. Because not everything that we like to do is good for us. Not everything we like to do is beneficial for us. And when things go unchecked, they get out of control. And that's what was the 1920s. You know, unchecked is a good word I like to put on the roaring 20s. Everybody had a great time. Everybody was making plenty of money. But it was unchecked. There was no balances there. Well, we know that unchecked, there's a payday someday for everything. When you live a life that's unchecked, sooner or later there's going to be a payday. Well, the 1930s were the payday. Everything, how they prospered and enjoyed themselves. Now look what happened in the 1930s, the Great Depression. All because there was no boundaries. There was a life of unrestraint. There was nobody imposed self-restraint on themselves. Somewhere along the line that had to intervene, and it didn't happen, and there was a payday, the 1930s. It devastated this country. I've talked to people who actually lived through it. It devastated this country. Maybe they didn't all play a part in the hand of the greed and all that caused the fall. but we all have to pay the penalty sometimes when we're a part of a nation. That's why it's good to vote and to do things of that nature, You say, well, I don't vote or anything because, who have I got to vote for? Well, do your part. Do your part. Do your part. When you do nothing and sit idly by the side, and then we complain, did we even have a right? But things left unchecked and out of balance, like the Roaring Twenties, will lead to the Great Depression of 1930. And everything in 1930, and we're going to work ahead here. I'm getting somewhere here. There's a method to my madness here. As we get to the 1940s, there was a great turmoil and devastation in this country. We know what it was, the Great Second War. The attack on Pearl Harbor led us to fight for our freedom. We learned something about ourselves during that time of crisis, that time we fight for your freedom. You're always in a fight, whether you think so or not. Everything might be going smoothly, but there's a battle for your soul. We learned something about ourselves. And everything that we went through in the 1940s to fight for our freedom, it led to the 1950s. The 1950s were some of the most prosperous times in this nation has ever seen. But somehow we didn't learn our lesson. Once again, things were getting out of control. 1920s led to the Roaring 20s led to the Great Depression. 1950s, all the prosperity. But it led to something else. The 1960s and the 1970s. Oh my goodness. And I know there's probably some old hippies in here, back in that day, and you're not going to own up to it. You probably had the big hairdos and all the things that are going on, and it'd be nice to see some pictures of that. I'd love to see that. Yeah, the bell-bottom pants, all those things. The 1960s and the 1970s, I tell you, if it doesn't represent a lack of self-restraint, nothing else does. 1960s and 1970s was anything goes. There's some great things that were accomplished in 1960s and 1970s. We went to the moon. Because of that lack of self-restraint, we look beyond the boundaries. But see, not everything that seems good is, because during that time as well, the morality in this country plummeted during the 1960s and 1970s, and this nation has never recovered since. It is still going downhill. It started there, but it's keep on going. I'm not saying sin started there. Some people act like sin just started now. Sin's been around an awful long time. Sin's been around since the book of Genesis in the garden. It's nothing new, but it just seems to be more rampant now. So everything continues to get out of control. We've never recovered from it. I'm going somewhere with this. In the 1980s and 1990s, it's all about self-restraint and boundaries. 1980s and 1990s, advances in technology revolutionized daily life. Now, I was around for those. I can remember all the advances in technology. I can remember when we first got our first microwave. Oh boy, well, we were uptown then, boy. We were doing something then. Didn't have to turn that stove on and heat the house up anymore, and all the technology, the advances that were coming. They're great. They advertised how much more free time we would have. My life seems busier than ever. Why? All this free time that we think we're going to have. But somehow we fill it with other things. But there's only one thing about that technology, how it revolutionized our life. It also fostered a need for instant gratification. Well, I want it now. The technology, it gave us the ability, all this free time, we want it now. An instant gratification. That is still in our society today. We've also never recovered from that. Because there was no boundaries, there was no self-restraint during all this free time that we had. That brings us to modern day. I said, well, how can I describe modern day? Look at all the things that are going on. And I heard someone else say this. I can't take credit for it, but I thought it was really good. The word to describe today's society is fragmentation. It's one of fragmentation. Our economic and global uncertainty. Look at it. It leads to division. Look at our nation. Criticizing and blaming and choosing sides are a way of life now. because, see, we're going down a path here. When you walk away from God and you don't use self-restraint and there's no boundaries that God has set into place, nothing good is ever going to come from it. It sounds good and it feels good. Not everything that we do that we think is good, it feels good to us, is good for us. It's not going to happen. Nothing good's going to happen, I should say. Well, you know, I'm not sure I want to buy into all this. This sounds like a lot of rules and regulations and things that are, I'm not sure I want to buy into that. God, walking with God and a relationship with God is not a bunch of do's and don'ts. It's really not. It's really not. If you're looking at it that way, you know, if I become a Christian or if I walk with God, it's going to rain on my parade. I'm not going to be able to do all the things that I want to do in life. Anything that you're doing outside the will of God is never going to benefit you truly. It might feel good for a little while, but sooner or later it's going to be payday. Sooner or later it's going to come full circle. I've been there, I know. Some people think that I've always been a Christian. Not far from it. Anything but that. The Apostle Paul talks about, the way he describes it, talks about an old man and a new man. The old man, the old you sometimes wants to rise up in you. You know, sometimes when you get stirred up, somebody's fired you up about something. Well, the new you has to overcome that. You have to use self-restraint. Self-restraint is not popular and it's not easy to do. Yes, we have freedom to choose. But we are not free from the consequences. There's consequences to everything that we choose. Whatever it is, there's a consequence to it. There's a price to pay. You must do, what is self-restraint? You must do the right thing even when you don't feel like doing it. I don't feel like eating right all the time. And I don't eat right all the time. But I got to do it because I need to use self-restraint. If I don't use self-restraint, that's bad news for me. There's things in our lives that we must use self-restraint in. We must pull ourselves back even when we don't want to. It's a difficult thing to do. It's easy for me to say up here, but it's difficult for me to go live it. If you don't use self-restraint in your life is going to be full of trouble. I've lived that way. You've probably seen people live that way. You may have lived that way at times in your life with no self-restraint. You're going to do what you want and nobody's going to tell you what to do. You know, where does it get you? Full of trouble. Trouble came your way sooner or later. Well, I just want to do life. I don't want to get involved in it. I just want to do life, Pastor. I'm just here to live my life and nothing else. When I think about people doing life, you know, when you do something, you're going to get a result of some sort. If you're doing life, you're going to get a result. If you're doing whatever, you're going to get a result sooner or later. So however you're doing life, I'm asking you, are you happy with the result you're getting? And are you going to be happy with the result at the end of it? That's the most important thing, the result that you get. So if you're doing life, well, we're all doing life. But at the end of it, are you going to get the result that you're looking for? Because, see, one day we're all going to stand before God. And you'll stand alone. You won't stand with the media, the social media, all these things out there. You won't stand with anybody. You'll stand alone before God. Can you imagine standing before a holy God and have to explain all the things? There's no explanation. God is not out to punish us. God wants to see our life change for the better. If God wanted to punish us, we'd be in trouble. What would an almighty God do to one of us if he really wanted to punish us? That would be bad news. But that is not God's desire for us. God's desire is to see our life change, to see a better life for us, to see our life move forward. He wants us all these things. But we've got to come clean with God. You don't have to come clean with anybody else, but you've got to come clean with God. You need to talk to him about whatever's going on in your life that you need to come clean about. Are the results you're getting in life where you want to be? Because, see, everybody's going to end up somewhere. If you're making more withdrawals than you are deposits, that's going to leave you empty sooner or later. With every head bowed and every eye closed.